Egan Bernal is one of the legends of Colombian cycling, once soaring on the wings of Tour de France triumph, but then faced the daunting abyss of a career-ending crash. Today, we're going to unravel the gripping tale of Egan Bernal, a Colombian cycling prodigy whose journey is a rollercoaster of triumph, tragedy, and the indomitable spirit that defies true champions. Born on January 13th, 1997 in Zipaquirá, Colombia, Egan Ale Bernal Gomez showed remarkable promise as a youngster in the sport of cycling. Bernal's path to greatness didn't begin with road cycling, but rather mountain biking. He participated in the junior categories at the World Championships a number of times. First, he managed to obtain a silver medal in Norway, finishing behind the Dane Simon Andreasen in 2014, and in 2015 he was crowned the Junior Pan American Champion in Colombia, overcoming a clavicle fracture that required surgical treatment 2 weeks earlier, and he even podiumed the World Championships again, this time in Andorra. At the end of 2015, he stayed in Europe with the intention of joining a road team. He was introduced to Gianni Savio, the owner of the Italian Pro Continental team, Adroni Giocattoli, and as a test, they put him in a race, the Sognado Giro del Flandre, and here Bernal won the race, and this immediately incentivized Savio to hire the Colombian for 4 seasons without having Bernal even turned 19, nor any experience in road racing. Bernal made his debut for the team in 2016 at the Tour de Mediterranean, where he managed to finish the race and even got a top 10 on one of the stages. The Colombian then built on this experience quickly, as the next race was the Coppi Bartoli. He won the youth classification, and he followed this up with winning the youth classification in another Italian race, the Giro del Trentino, and at the Romanian race, the Tour of Bihor, Bernal managed to win stage 1 and take the overall as well. Thereafter, Egan Bernal was tested against the World Tour teams at the Tour of Slovenia and managed to finish 4th overall, on top of that winning the youth classification as well, before Egan Bernal went to the Tour de l'Avenir to test himself against the best young riders of his own generation. And here he came out 4th overall, but managed to finish inside the top 10 on all the mountain stages, but ultimately finished 2 minutes and 46 seconds behind the winner of David Gaudu. Adroni Giocattoli had a setback, as they had an expectation of entering the Giro d'Italia and sending Egan there. However, the team ultimately didn't get the invite. Nevertheless, in 2017, Bernal had more confidence, and in the San Juan International race in the beginning of the season, he showed his form by finishing 6th on the Alto Colorado, and in the process managed to finish 9th overall in the stage race, only 14 seconds behind Vincenzo Nibali, and also winning the youth classification. Tirreno Adriatico was the next race on the agenda, and this was his first World Tour race, and Bernal fought for the youth classification but ultimately lost out to Bob Jungels and finished 16th overall. At that year's Coppi Bartoli edition, Bernal was in the front end of the race for many of the stages, finishing 6th in the group behind Tom Scoinge on a stage and 9th overall on the final stage, which meant that the Colombian finished 4th overall. Bernal was even close to winning the Giro del Apennino, the one-day race, only losing out to the lone winner by 16 seconds. Moreover, the Italian fortune continued at the Tour of the Alps, where Bernal finished 7th on the final stage in the second group behind the winner, Thibaut Pinot, who took the win, and thereby Egan Bernal won the youth classification, in the process being very active in the mountain stages, which incidentally sparked interest from several of the best World Tour teams, despite him only being in his second year of a 4-year contract with Adroni. He continued the second part of the season where he won the Tour of Savio by winning stage 2 with a 49-second margin, and stage 4, which was the time trial. Bernal then went back to Romania, where he'd already won a stage race and destroyed his opposition in the Sibiu cycling tour, winning imperiously on stage 2 with a huge watt attack of more than 800 watts, and again on stage 3, winning all but one classification in the process as well. Tour l'Avenir was the next challenge, and here he absolutely smashed his rivals on stage 7 and 8 and went on to win the race overall as a process ahead of Bjørn Lambæk and Niklas E of Denmark. Immediately after obtaining the title, Team Sky made the signing of the rider official from 2018, thereby confirming what was already rumored for several months. By the end of the season, Bernal once again had an outstanding performance as the best youngster in the Giro di Toscana and a 13th place as well in his first monument on the World Tour, the Giro di Lombardia. In 2018, now with his new team, he began the year at the Tour Down Under, going as the leader of a very young squad. Bernal managed to finish 5th on the iconic Wollonga Hill stage and sealed 6th overall, as well as the youth classification, so not a bad start. Bernal returned to Colombia to participate at the Colombian National Championships, and here he managed to win the national time trial title and played a vital role for his teammate Sergio Henao, who went on to clinch the road race title. Subsequently, Bernal went to the first edition of the Colombia Tour, and in the mountains he wasted no time and began to show himself stronger than who was the actual leader for the team, Henao, reaching the last stage with a deficit of a few seconds to the race leader of Nairo Quintana. With 3 kilometers to go, Bernal launched an attack that took the group leaders by surprise, managing to recover his deficit at the finishing line, thereby taking the title in front of both Nairo and Uran. Bernal continued the year and went to the Volta a Catalunya, showing himself again to be very consistent and the main rival in the general classification for Alejandro Valverde, whom Bernal had finished behind on stage 4 of. Despite this, bad luck deprived Bernal of his first podium at the World Tour due to a fall near the finish line that caused a double fracture of his clavicle and scapula that forced him to abandon, sadly. Fortunately, the fractures were not as serious as first thought, so this meant that he was able to return to racing shortly after. This was in the form of the Tour de Romandie, and it was on the 3rd stage and 9.8 kilometer time trial that Bernal surprised the big names by winning the stage and achieving his first World Tour win 4 seconds quicker than the race leader Primož Roglič. The next day in the Queen stage, he attacked the leader Roglič on the final climb, but Roglič was solid and did not give up time. After the final stage, Bernal took 2nd place on the podium and won the best young rider youth classification once again. The next race on the horizon was across the pond, the Tour of California. Bernal went on to win stage 2, where he seized the lead of the race by a narrow margin, but that was not enough to keep the lead after stage 4, which was a flat 34.7 kilometer time trial where TJ Van Garderen overtook the lead. However, on stage 6, Team Sky set up Bernal perfectly and he attacked on the final climb, arriving solo at the finish line with a big margin over his rivals, which allowed him to secure the victory of the race of the following day. Bernal thereby won his first stage race in the World Tour, as well as winning the youth classification once again. Due to the level exhibited in California and the successful start to the season, Sky changed their initial plan of sending Bernal to the Vuelta a España for his first Grand Tour, and rather he was going to line up at the Tour de France alongside Chris Froome, the defending champion, and Geraint Thomas. Despite the lack of experience, Bernal was excited to be at his first Tour de France. He was the youngest rider of the 2018 edition, and during the first week of the race, he suffered several mishaps. These incidents did not cause him serious injuries, but he did suffer in the general classification. Once the race turned to the mountains, he remarkably fulfilled his domestique work as the last man for his leaders in the mountains, climbing the same level as the rivals in the general classification, and this was truly impressive. At the end of a hard tour, Bernal managed to finish 15th and just missing out on the white jersey, but more importantly, he demonstrated his aptitude as a Grand Tour rider, but it was a success for the team nonetheless, with a double podium of Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome. Bernal's next race was the San Sebastian Classic, 1 week after the tour. However, this was not the same success, as in the last 20 kilometers he was the victim of a big crash at the head of the peloton, after which he had to be evacuated by an ambulance after suffering a head and facial trauma that caused a slight cerebral hemorrhage, a fracture of the nasal septum that meant that he would be staying away from races for a couple of months. Nevertheless, Bernal recovered quickly from his injuries and managed to finish the season at the Italian monument Giro di Lombardia, and here he improved on his last year's result by finishing 12th. For the 2019 season, Bernal began the season a little later than 2018, with a view to his participation being in the Giro this year as the team leader for Team Sky, and his first stage race of the year was the Colombian Tour as the defending champion, but this time it was not as successful, finishing in 4th place. The following month, the first big test arrived in the form of Paris-Nice. Bernal rode a consistent race with a good TT on stage 5 to lift him up to 2nd overall in the GC, and on the Col de Torini he put time into the leader and took over the leader's jersey, which he successfully defended on the last day against a distant attack from Nairo Quintana, and thereby he managed to finish ahead of Nairo in 2nd place, as well as his teammate Mikhail Kwiatkowski in 3rd place. A truly sensational win by Egan Bernal. Bernal headed to the Vuelta a Catalunya, and at the end of the race he was 3rd after fighting hard against Adam Yates, who was 2nd, and his compatriot Miguel Angel Lopez, who was the eventual winner of the race. Around the same time, there was a structural change of Team Sky, who announced the change of sponsor as of May 2019, and now they were going to be known as Team Ineos, sponsored by the petrochemical company of the same name. Bernal continued his preparations of his goal of the season, which was the Giro. However, he sustained a crash which broke his clavicle a week before the start of the Giro, which prevented him from taking part. As a result, his goals shifted, and now his main goal became the Tour de France. And in preparation for the Tour, he was sent along with Geraint Thomas to the Tour de Suisse, while Froome attended the Dauphiné. Sadly, it was at this race where Froome's career really took a change for the worse, as he sustained a serious crash, and that sidelined him for the rest of the season. Moreover, at the Tour de Suisse, Thomas also suffered a crash in the 4th stage of the race, which forced him to retire, leaving Bernal as the team leader in the race. It was thus on stage 6, Bernal took the lead of the race, which he successfully defended until stage 9, and in the process he even managed to win the 7th stage up the legendary Gotthard Pass. The defense in the individual time trial of stage 8 against Rowan Dennis was notable, and he almost crashed as well, but he saved it with some brilliant bike handling. But ultimately, Bernal won the race overall. Following the performance at Tour de Suisse, and Ineos decided to announce that it was going to be shared leadership between Geraint Thomas and Egan Bernal due to the unknown form of the Welshman, considering the crash he had in Switzerland. During the first stages of the race, Bernal did not give up time against his rivals in the GC, and in the team time trial in Brussels, he only lost a few seconds against Jumbo-Visma. The first point of interest for the GC riders was stage 6, finishing up La Planche de Belfi, and here Bernal only lost a few seconds to his teammate Thomas and managed to still sit 6th overall, and this meant that the balance had tipped in the favor of the reigning champion as team leader. On stage 10, thanks to the presence of wind and crashes, Bernal distanced many rivals in the process in the GC, such as Pinot, and then on stage 13, at 27-kilometer time trial, Bernal had a discreet performance, leaving him 2 minutes and 55 seconds behind Alaphilippe, but crucially he was also behind his teammate Geraint Thomas. Next the race descended upon the mountains of the Pyrenees, where Bernal was consistent, receiving freedom from the team as well to chase his own race on the sidelines of his teammate Geraint Thomas, who ended up losing time on the following stage, finishing up the Col du Tourmalet. After completing the 15th stage, Bernal was wearing the white jersey and was 2 minutes and 2 seconds off the lead and only 27 seconds behind his teammate Geraint Thomas. The next mountain range was the Alps, and here Bernal proved to be the strongest of the climbers, taking time from all his rivals in stage 18, and on the following day, stage 19, with the finish in Tignes. This was where Bernal launched an attack with more than 40 kilometers to go on the ascent to the Col de l'Isran. However, 28 kilometers from the finish line, the stage was suspended due to weather conditions. The organizers counted the times at the pass of the Isran, where Bernal led the group of favorites by about a minute and the former leader Alaphilippe by more than 2 minutes. With these differences, this meant that Bernal got the yellow jersey, which he kept with no problem until Paris, and Bernal celebrated with his team coming into the finish. On the final podium, he was flanked by his teammate Geraint Thomas in second place and Steven Kruijswijk in third place. Not only did he win the Tour de France, he also became the first Colombian to do so in the Tour's history, as well as becoming the youngest rider to win it in over 110 years at 22 years old. Nevertheless, the following year, Bernal began the 2020 season by placing second in the National Road Championships and third in the Time Trial Championships in Colombia. However, the COVID-19 pandemic ended up affecting the international cycling calendar, forcing Bernal and the rest of the professional field to suspend their schedule. And after a 6-month break, he returned with the goal of retaining his Tour de France title. He managed to win the Route de Occitanie, including a stage, and in addition he also finished second in the Tour de l'Ain to Primož Roglič. At the Tour, Bernal started well as he was inside the top 5 after stage 5, and he managed to move up into second place after finishing 4th in a very selective GC group in La Rance, which was won by Tadej Pogačar. Bernal was positioned in second place until stage 13, where he lost more than 40 seconds, and he went on to lose even more time on the Grand Colombier stage, where he lost almost 30 minutes in the high mountains, citing that the pain he had been suffering from for some time was back. And before the start of stage 17, he decided to leave the Tour due to said back pains. Bernal later explained in an interview that the cause of his back pain was scoliosis, a product of having one leg longer than the other, which had been something that had been plaguing him for a long time, and also meant that he ended his season. The following year, while his back pain wasn't quite cured, his big goal was the 2021 Giro d'Italia, and in preparation for the Corsa Rosa, Bernal began racing in the Étoile de Bessèges without much success, and thereafter went to the Tour de la Provence, where he helped his teammate Ivan Sosa win the title and finished on the podium himself. He also went to Strade Bianche for the first time, where his mountain bike background really came in handy, as he managed to hang on to Mathieu van der Poel and Julien Philippe, who made the crucial selection, and the Colombian finished third on the podium in Siena. Afterwards, at Triennio Adriatico, Bernal managed to finish 4th in a very tough edition of the race. At the Giro, Bernal showed himself in stage 6, almost catching the breakaway ride of Gino Merda, who won the stage, and Bernal led home Dan Martin and Remco Evenepoel at the finish. Bernal then seized control of the Giro on stage 9 up the gravel climb of Campo Felice, where Ineos led him out perfectly on the mountain, and Bernal attacked and soloed from the favorites to win the stage in an iconic fashion, and thereby also taking over the Maglia Rosa in the process. Ineos put more time into the rivals on the Montalcino stage, which was the gravel stage of the race, with some fantastic work by the team, in particular Filippo Ganna, before on Monte San Colomb Bernal managed to extend his gap with some brilliant climbing, and on stage 16 Bernal really sealed the crown with an imperious victory on the Passo Gao, followed by a third place on the Alpe d'Huez and a second place at the Alpe Motta, sealing his overall victory. And in addition, Bernal became the fourth rider to win both the Maglia Rosa and the Maglia Blanca in the same year, as well as being the first Latin American to win both the Giro and the Tour. Not bad for a rider only aged 24 years, 4 months and 17 days, and this made him the third youngest rider to do so in the process, only falling behind two other legends, Gino Bartali and Eddy Merckx. The 2022 season started horribly as Bernal suffered a serious accident whilst training on his TT bike with a collision with a bus in Bogota, which left him hospitalized with several leg and kneecap fractures, and the cycling world was really fearing for Bernal. His road to recovery was a very long and painful one, but he managed to return to racing for the first time at the Tour of Denmark, and despite not completing it, it was still a huge milestone, and he even went to the Deutschland Tour as well. And the following year, Bernal was back to some extent, achieving some minor results compared to his previous best, but taking an 8th place at the Tour de Romandie and also 8th place at the Tour of Hungary, which was very big successes considering where he had come from. But unfortunately, Bernal suffered plenty of crashes in 2023 as well, in Catalonia and even twice at the Tour de France as well. So it was quite hard to achieve that full fitness. He reflected on this, saying that he had a very different view on life after his near-death collision in Colombia the previous year, and for him, completing the Tour de France in itself was a victory. Egan Bernal's rise and tragic fall in the world of professional cycling is a testament to the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. His story will continue to inspire future generations of riders in Colombia. Whether he ultimately reaches the pinnacle of the sport again is something that remains to be seen, but he has already, at such a young age, carved a legacy in his name that will forever be etched into the cycling history books, and he will remain a symbol of hope, resilience, and the pursuit of glory for years to come. That's basically it for this video about Egan Bernal. Let me know what you think of Egan Bernal. I'm a huge fan, and make sure to hit the like button as well. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and of course, as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you around.